Our next speaker, and our last speaker, is a legend in our industry, Ingmar Andreasson. He is an Emeritus Professor and former Director of the Center for Traffic Research at KTS Sweden in Stockholm. He previously funded the Volvo Transportation Systems group. For the last 25 years, he's been very active in personal rapid transit design and operating strategies. Ingmar is going to talk about the PRT system in SunCheun, Korea. Ingmar?
Thank you. Vectus is a Korean company, and I don't look like being a Korean, and I'm not. They asked me to do their presentation on their behalf. So like Shannon, I'm speaking to something that someone else did. I do know Vectus rather well because in the early years, during their first years of design, I worked for them as a consultant, but that was from 2003 to 2007. So since then, I can only tell you what's on the slides. The company owning this system is a subsidiary of Podcar, which means Pohang Steel Company in Korea. It's a very large steel company, very profitable, and they decided to invest in alternative businesses because someday steelmaking may not be so profitable anymore. So they decided to invest in intelligent transportation systems. So, and this came out of it. This presentation is about a commercial operation that is running in SunCheun City in South Korea. Where do I switch here? Maybe this one. Okay. So it's in the southern part of South Korea, and it is a national park and a wetland area, and it's known for special birds that come there, and they also host a garden show regularly, and this particular system was built for one of these garden shows. But it's also serving the wetlands area where the birds viewing is. So this shows on the map the guideway alignment, so it's 4.5 kilometers double track. It's not much of a network, but there are several switches in it, and there are 40 vehicles, so it demonstrates the capabilities of switching and running at speed and at close distances. The operation here, the special company was set up for this operation. It's called Ecotrans, and you can find it on the internet, skycube.co.kr. And it's Podcar owning it. The availability is over 99.5%, and in certain months they had 99.87%, I think was their record, which is extremely good. The ridership is average 1,000 to 1,500 a day, and they had 570,000 passengers last year, and that was 8 months only, because they only started to count in April, because that's when they started to charge fares, and they had no other way of counting passengers. So the fare is quite high, it's $7 US, but the alternative to walk is quite a long walk. It only operates full days in the summer and slightly shorter days in the winter. So they call this system the SunCheun Skycube. So there are many names here. There is Podcar for the owner, there is Vectus for the subsidiary company, and there is Skycube for this particular application. And it's a build, operate, and transfer system. That means that a company builds the system and runs it for 30 years and then hands it over to the city, probably in this case. So, and also it was built as a commercial venture for POSCO. So the client, the city, did not pay for this system. POSCO built it with their own money, and they have a license to operate it for 30 years, and they expect to get their money back. So they started live operation September 2013, but they only starting collecting fares from April last year. And it took 23 months to build. That's remarkable. There's a lot of concrete in those guideways, and the soil there isn't very stable, and it's an earthquake area, so it's a complicated construction project, and it was all made in 23 months from contract to first operation. You know this, 4.6 kilometers, 40 vehicles. They say they can carry 10 passengers, but that's 10 Koreans. They have 6 seats, and they can take luggage and baby buggies and bicycles. Following the regulations for rail vehicles, and all level access by parking doors, so completely ADA commensurate. The capacity they claim is 1,500 passengers per hour per direction, based on the headway that they apply now. It's approved for 4-second headways at the speed of 65 kilometers per hour, but they run at, I think, 6-second headways and at slightly lower speed. Here you see the supplier and also the owner of the company. It's POSCO ICT company, which is a subsidiary of POSCO, but now on the stock exchange as a separate company. So this, as opposed to some of the other systems, this one is captive on the running rails. It cannot derail. It's held inside the rail. Says speed around 40, but I know it's approved for 65 kilometers per hour. Asynchronous control means it works like car traffic. You can start when the main line is free, and then you may have to slow down as necessary. Minimum headway 4 seconds, distributed control system, current collection along the guideway. This is different from what they had in their original design. They used to have linear induction motors in the guideway, but that's an expensive solution, and you only need that when you have snow and ice conditions. If you haven't, it's cheaper to have ordinary rotary motors and run have the propulsion through the wheels. They also have closed-circuit television, two-way communication, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, passenger information displays. The guideway is concrete. Doesn't have to be concrete. In fact, when they designed it, they had a steel tube for the guideway, so that as long as you have the rail as it has to be, then it can be anything under it. Typical span is 30 meters, but they have one over a river that is 50 meters. They have 30 people working in this place, and that includes, I mean, there are several shifts here, and it's weekends and so on, so that's all together. The control type is radio frequency, communication-based train control, moving block, and it's also dynamic moving block. That means that the block size depends on the speed. So when you're going slow, you can go very close together. When you go at top speed, you have to keep a longer distance. And then they use this particular frequency and this particular radio system. They have a separate platform screen door safety system. Does this drop or? they're running on steel wheels, but there's a plastic coating on the steel wheel to eliminate noise, mostly. This is the accumulation of ridership. So up through August of this year, they had about, say, almost a million passengers. Yes, 972,000 passengers. So they are catching up on the other systems eventually in total ridership. And it has been the maximum 8,500 in one day. And the maximum availability was even better than I said before, 99.97. That's over 1 month, the best month. Here are some pictures. I don't want that. So the vehicle was designed by an Italian design firm. I forget the name now. Pininfarina, yes, thank you. So I think they still pay a license to Pininfarina for every vehicle that they produce. Some pictures of the stations. I mean, these are expensive stations. Very nice, but I mean, you don't have to have this much for a station, but they chose to have nice stations. And this is an inside view of the depot and a vehicle queue. So, well, you see what this is. You see the platform screen doors in the station. They spent a lot of time and effort in getting the certification for this system, and they did that in Sweden according to European standards. It's remarkable that a Korean company chose to do their development. It's not mine. Chose to do their development in Europe, and I asked them, why did you do that? It would have been cheaper to do it in Korea. And they said, well, we want to build it to European standards. That helps the marketing afterwards. So it has been approved by the Swedish authorities for speeds up to 50 kilometers per hour. I know it was 3 seconds minimum headway. Here it says 4. This process of certification took more than a year, and I know it was 1,200 pages of documentation. So it's not a piece of cake to get certification. And here are some of the certificates. They have the Lloyd Register now certificate, and now they're going through Korean. It says that they are being certified in Korea. I don't know if they haven't been until now, or if it was enough to have the Swedish certification. Here shows the track, and the only thing that is important for it is these square tubes, that one and the one on the other side. That's what they run on, and then this is what they steer on, and this is what protects it from falling out. And the power, the electricity comes, I think, up here. Under there could be anything, a tube or a concrete or a floor. So the gauge is 1,000 millimeters, that's 1 meter. Yeah. Here, I don't know if you can read this, but it shows where the air conditioning system is, where the door buttons are inside, passenger information screen, the air compressor, the electric communication control unit. Here is the power shoes to pick up 500 volt DC from the power rails. They have air spring suspension, which they didn't have in the beginning. These are the guide wheels. The steering is by wheels running towards the inside of the rail. And then when they switch, they put the wheel on the outside of the rail. The switch wheel is shown down here comes out only when you need to switch. So that's the size is 3.6 meter long, 2.1 meter high, no, 2.5 meters high, 2.1 meter wide. It weighs 2.3 tons, empty, and they can cope with 10% grades. Actually, with linear induction motors, you can do better than that, but I chose to limit it to 10%. Speed is up to 60 kilometers per hour. They run it at 40. And this is the emergency braking rate is up to 6 meters per second square. That's about 0.6 G. Here's the control system. I'm not going through it, but it's partly in the guideway to monitor a section of the guideway and the merges, and it's partly on board, and that's called the vehicle controller, and it takes care of propulsion and switching, door control and vehicle control. And then there's a separate, oh, this falls down by itself. A separate controller only looking after the safety, which has to be separated from all other systems. The traction power supply, they start from 22,000 volts AC, and then they have 3 substations to bring it down to 500 volt DC. That's what they run on. So I might be able to answer some questions, but probably not all. The company is alive and kicking, but the owners has shifted from the mother company of POSCO to POSCO ICT, which is a separate company on the stock market. And so this is not the core business for POSCO ICT, and I think that's the reason maybe they didn't choose to come to this conference. But they wanted me to present their material, and they are very open to new business. Thank you.